So it's come to my attention that in all these Monster Manual videos and in all of the Berserk videos that I've never made a specific video talking about the brand of sacrifice and its mechanics. And seeing how it's pretty much the staple symbol of the entire series, used to recognize that this is Berserk that we're talking about. People know it's Berserk just by the symbol itself. It's the only image on the front cover of the deluxe editions of the manga, and many fans around the world have specifically had it tattooed on them. And here's just a small sample from some of my subscribers that have the brand of sacrifice tattooed on them, which is really awesome. Thank you guys for sending those in. Really appreciate it. Even if you're going to be constantly tormented by nightly demons and restless spirits the rest of your lives, but hey, whatever gets you going. I guess it's time that I talk about why this mark is so symbolic to the series and where its origins come from. But before I get into that, if you'd be so kind, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I upload consistent manga, anime, berserk, movie, and existential life dread content straight to your YouTube feed on the daily, and I'm the only anti-tuber on the internet to survive a battle with Sasquatch, so that's gotta count for something. Now, I couldn't find any specific reference stating what Miura based the brand of sacrifice off of, but most fans seem to be convinced that it's based on the ancient rune symbols that he took pieces of and then created his own. Whether he took them from specific words or meanings or not, it hasn't been officially stated, at least anywhere that I could find. Please feel free to correct me in the comments down below if you do find some sources that come from Miura himself or any of his editors. But interesting to note that his original brand of sacrifice design featured in the Berserk prototype was noticeably different than the one that we have today, featuring a circular bottom and then an open top. But once we get into the official manga, the brand takes on a much more dynamic and angular shape, still leaving the straight line in the center and the open top up above. Miura may have changed the design in order to look like and match with the Holy Sea idol, which looks mostly like a bird rising out of a double helix-like shape, which has many implications within the story, as the Holy See is the one ruling religion of most of humanity and gives prophecies of a falcon of light eventually arriving to lead everybody to salvation, much like the coming of Christ. So it kind of works in multiple ways. You have the familiar religious imagery to us, as the bird with the outstretched wings is kind of similar to Jesus on a crucifix with his arms out. Jesus in the position of being a sacrifice for mankind, whereas here we basically have the sacrifices of man giving way to the arrival of their Jesus-like figures. So it's kind of the opposite. The double helix is also interesting because, and maybe I'm getting a little too headcanon here, but dealing with the Berserk Abyss, which is essentially the Berserk version of hell, a swirling vortex of souls all meshing together in torment and misery to the point where they lose their individuality and just become nothing more but a feeling of pain. It swirls around like a funnel, similar to the helix around the falcon symbol, similar to the bottom markers of the brand of sacrifice. Essentially, it's all aligned together, and I think Miura, more so than copying any specific rune to make his brand, thought about his own story and his own symbolism that he was trying to make, and made a rune-like symbol to represent this idea of sacrifice, prophecy, and the falcon rising from those sacrifices, which all leads into Griffith and Falconia and everything that happens in the story. I don't know if I'm reaching here, but I would like to believe that Miura thought about this and tried to create the most simplistic and to-the-point design that he could, and wouldn't make it too overly complicated, and yet it makes sense for the full spectrum of the story. Now, essentially how the brand works in the story is it is a marker based on a ritual sacrifice, coming from the deepest layers of the astral world, and I've done a video on the astral world, Baelits, and apostles, all of which would probably be very useful for this video, so if you'd like to check them out, I'll try to remember to link them in the description below. But anyways, once a Baelit is destined to be with somebody, it will end up within their grasp at the moment that they need it most. That being a moment of complete and utter despair mixed with an intense desire, when all hope seems lost. The Baelit will create an overlap of the physical and astral worlds, and the user will come face to face with the God Hand. And the God Hand will give them the choice to sacrifice something that represents their ties to humanity. In exchange, they get untold amounts of strength and power and get to live out their days embracing their inner darkness to whatever extent that person is capable of. And obviously, if someone is in that position of desperation, they will, on a 99.99999% probability, choose to relinquish their humanity and live freely within their darkness. So, severing your ties to humanity usually means giving up a person you love the most, or an equivalent of such. The ties to your humanity, the symbolic idea that by sacrificing them, you are in turn sacrificing your humanity, your compassion, your empathy, or at least all of that to a degree. The ceremony in which this happens is called the Invocation of Doom, which is just badass. I love it. Now, so far in the manga, we have only seen 2 occasions where the brand is created, and both times it is created by the God Hand member Void. Now, many theories go into Void himself and his importance, but it's not relevant to this video. Anyway, Void seems to just manifest the brand with his power out of nowhere, and at the point of the user agreeing to make the sacrifice, the brand is then sent out like a magic missile. You D&D fans know what I'm talking about, and it never misses its target. And once it hits, it literally burns into them like a literal brand. So you have this burn mark on your body in the shape of the brand symbol, and though some may have theories about where it lands on the body having some significance, nothing has been confirmed or denied in the manga or by Miura, but mostly it seems to land on the body at random, and it will land wherever it just happens to land on the body. Also, it should be noted that the branded one must literally be important and representative to the user's humanity. In the Black Swordsman arc, in order to save his life, the Count needed to brand somebody again, and he wanted it to be Guts, but the request was refused because of 2 reasons. Guts didn't mean anything to the Count significantly, and Guts was already branded at the time. So you can't be branded just out of hatred, and you can't be branded if you've already been branded before. Now, I know some people will say the Count branded his wife because he hated her. No, the Count loved his wife. That's what drove him to despair in the first place, because he couldn't believe her betrayal. When you find out that your wife, whom you thought was loyal, was actually getting train run on her by a bunch of heretics and a Baphomet statue, well, any normal man would fly into a rage, sure. But the Count killed all the heretics, but he could not bring himself to kill his wife, despite her betrayal, because he still loved her. And that's precisely why she worked as a sacrifice. Anyway, once branded, the branded ones are then ritualistically killed in a feast-like fashion, literally eaten alive by other apostles. Now, it's a bit of a question as to how many apostles show up for each ceremony. Notably, for a God Hand ceremony, the amount is much larger, as the sacrifice also is much larger. With Griffith's sacrifice, it was the entire Band of the Hawk, but the God Hand sacrifice only comes once every 216 years, and it was the final God Hand ceremony, at least of this generation. It also seems that even if the branded wasn't predominantly evil themselves, by the mere misfortune of being involved with demonkind at all, upon their deaths they are also sent to the vortex of souls, swirling within this feeling of torment for all of eternity. Sorry, Judo. Now, when it comes to Guts and Casca in the story, both were branded for sacrifice the same way as the rest of the Band of the Hawk were, but thanks to the intervention of the Skull Knight, they were taken out of the part of the astral world where the ceremony was taking place and brought back into the physical world. But this would go on to cause a lot more problems, because Guts and Casca, though escaping the ritual, are still branded. And as of yet in the manga, there is no conceivable way to remove the brand. And even if you could remove it from your physical self, like say the brand was on your hand, like with Judo, if Judo escaped and he cut off his hand, well, it wouldn't really matter because the brand is still attached to your astral body, or kind of your soul, so to speak. So even if you remove the physical, it's still imprinted on you forever. Sorry, Judo. Anyways, while being branded, Guts and Casca are still subject to being sacrificed. This means that all manner of apostles, restless spirits, they're literally drawn to the brand like a beacon in order to kill and eat them. They can sense the brand and stiff their way to it, so to speak. This caused many restless nights for Guts, as creatures of darkness are more prevalent at night, and spirits can torment and even temporarily possess him. The brand will also begin to bleed as a creature of darkness is nearby, and actually even causes a fair amount of pain along with it to the branded, to the point where being near a god hand will cause pain so intense that it's practically debilitating, and could even kill you. But Guts, being the absolute unit that he is, actually used this feature of the brand to help him locate apostles during his 2-year revenge mission in order to kill them. When the brand would bleed and he'd feel pain, he'd know that they were nearby. Later on in the manga, when Guts meets Flora and Shirike, both well versed in magic, they are able to place a talisman over top of the brand which weakens its effects, at least temporarily, and it's something that needs to be applied several times as it will only last about a day or two at best. And there are also talismans that are set up around sacred locations like Flora's mansion or in Elfhelm, that by the sheer amount of them that are there, that particular area is safe from the effects of the brand. Again, it doesn't eliminate the brand, but it dulls the effects of its attraction to evil. Couple more things to note regarding the brand. Some fans say that the mere fact that Guts and Casca are still alive means that Griffith's sacrifice to ascension into a god hand is incomplete. And I don't personally see that as the case. The ritual was completed, Griffith is Femto now, and Guts and Casca are still sacrifices. They just have yet to die. Basically, what I'm saying is that the act of them being killed isn't as important as Griffith making the sacrifice itself. But they are still destined to die and be killed, and that's what matters. They are not, and never will, truly be safe until something comes up in the manga that could possibly erase the brand. There's also a moment where we get a shot of corpses underneath the Tower of Rebirth in Midland. In this moment, we see all the corpses have brands on their foreheads, and there's two strange things about this. All of them being branded in the same location, number one, and their bodies are still here, which means they were not eaten by apostles. Now, my personal theory on this is that these are remnants of the very first sacrifice, which was before apostles would have been around, so it was done in a different way. Nothing has yet to be confirmed in the story or by Miura, but whatever happened here is very different than the traditional branding and sacrifices as we've seen it before in the manga. Also, the Egg of the Perfect World. I've made a video specifically on this character and a video on the incarnation ceremony itself, so I'm not going to go all into that here, but essentially the Egg of the Perfect World is a very special case of one destined to become an apostle who did not have anybody to sacrifice. So, long story short, he was willing to sacrifice himself in order to bring about a better world. Working like a giant Bailet, activating to the desires of all of Albion, crying out for a savior from the darkness. A darkness that was created from years of tortured and murdered people at the hands of the Holy See, all rising in reaction to Guts and Casca's brands, and for them being in that location. As chaos starts to rise, we even see the symbol of the brand within the fires that are rising down below, basically showing us that all of these people, and this current world in general, is up on the chopping block to be sacrificed to make way for a new world, led by a rising hawk of light that was Griffith. Segueing all the way back to the beginning of this video and the very design of the brand of sacrifice to begin with, the rising hawk fulfilling the desires of all mankind and given strength through their sacrifices. So, if you were to receive the brand of sacrifice, you're pretty much fucked. Basically, you're just gonna die within a few minutes, getting devoured by a demonic entity. And if you are somehow lucky enough to be rescued by a thick skeleton man, then every single day of your life is just going to be constant struggle for survival. But hey, maybe that's the point. Berserk shows us that life may be pain, turmoil, and non-stop battles, but you continue forward anyway, not just for yourself, but for the ones you love, for the ones that you would never sacrifice, to choose the pain of humanity over the emptiness of evil. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the brand of sacrifice down below in the comments. Leave your thoughts, theories, opinions, all things brand of sacrifice. Be curious to read them all. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like it and subscribe if you want to stick around and see more content. Also, check out the links in the description where you can find my Patreon, merch store, and various social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.